Welcome to the JOMA Preventative Health Podcast, hosted by the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association. We provide you with up-to-date information on health topics geared towards the Orthodox Jewish community. This podcast content is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice or as a substitute for the medical advice of a physician.
Welcome to the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association, or JOMA podcast. I'm your host, Elisa Minkin. I'm a general pediatrician and proud JOMA member. And today I'm really honored and really excited to be interviewing Susan Senator. If there are topics you want to hear, if you want to be interviewed, if you know someone you want to hear being interviewed, if you have comments on the talks I've done so far, or our specialty spotlight, which I don't do, please reach out to us at health, HEALTH, at joma.org. We want to hear from you. I'm going to say that while Susan and I are both autism moms, this talk can be appreciated by anyone who knows someone, young person with a disability. It doesn't have to be autism. You could be a parent of a child, for example, with Down syndrome, or a relative. So I want to make it more approachable for everybody and not to be thought of as so specific. Susan Senator is an author, blogger, and journalist living in the Boston area with her husband, Ned. She has 3 sons, the oldest of whom is 33 and has severe autism. She is the author of Making Peace with Autism, as well as the Autism Mom's Survival Guide and Autism Adulthood, Insights and Creative Strategies for a Fulfilling Life. She's been a journalist since 1997, and she has a blog on Psychology Today, and she has published many pieces on disability, parenting, and living happily in places like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and NPR. She has appeared as a guest on the Today Show, MSNBC, ABC News, PBS, NPR, and CNN. Her writings on Special Olympics took her to the White House in 2006 to a state dinner for Eunice Kennedy Shriver. Ms. Senator's blog, publications, and events can all be found on www.susansenator.com, and we will be linking that in the show notes. Welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, I'm really, really excited because, as we said before we started this talk, we're both autism moms and we're both from the autism stone age, right? As you call it. We're veterans.
That's
And
right.
so I think we really need to talk about autism in adulthood. We don't do that enough. I mean, when I was trying to find information online for this talk, I couldn't really find anything other than your book.
Yeah, that's surprising. Actually not surprising, because that's been happening to me the whole way through, as it happened to you. Like when Nat was first diagnosed in 1992, there were only 2 books in the library. There, excuse me, there was There's a Boy in Here by Sean and Judy Barron, and there was the DSM. So
wow.
I liked the Barron book a lot. Let's say that. And then there was Rain Man. There was like nothing that was
stereotypes
matching what I was seeing.
Right. And then there was like the Autism Magic Cure books.
Absolutely. I still have a little bit of, I don't know what, jealousy. Every time I came across a book like that, I basically wouldn't read it, because I had tried things, different things, and nothing had worked. And then I started to evolve into that, acceptance stage, where it was like, well, I don't even know what working means anymore. I just have to look at Nat and judge what his goals and progress should be,
Right. But I think that we looked at it then, not we, you and me, but just our society looked at it as this mysterious disorder that has to be eradicated.
Right.
Remember that ad I think it was Child Study, autism has your child in jail or something like that. Remember that ad?
There was that. I was thinking of the Autism Speaks one with the empty baby carriages lined up.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Your child's been kidnapped.
I mean, that was the basic idea, though, and we were under pressure as parents to do everything to get rid of it. And now we have a whole different neurodiversity approach, which is controversial, because if your child is more impaired, you still have to deal with trying to help your child have a full life, be safe, right? All of these things.
Yeah, all of that is still there. And there is some animosity between, the neurodiversity groups and the mom groups, parent groups of the more involved I don't even know
Right.
what to call it anymore. Profound, severe, more involved.
Greater support needs. I like that one.
Okay. All right. So in other words, the people who need an advocate to speak for them
Right.
versus someone who can speak for themselves. But there's so many connections that could be made and that are made. I mean, my autistic friends have informed me of so many things, given me an idea of what life might be like for Nat. So even though they experience things on uh, they're more involved with the world and with speaking, a lot of their perceptions of how they live in the world and what they need has helped me
Right.
get an idea. That's really valuable because I can't ask him.
Right. Right. But we as parents have to advocate. We are, to the best of our ability, their voice, right, when it comes to how they're going to live their life. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
And I do, on my podcast, I have had autistic people, so I do have their voice as well. So I want people listening to not think, that's where some of this tension comes in from, right? Is we're
Right.
talking about autism, but we're not autistic, right?
Right.
So, but
As
our
far as I
kids need,
know. Sorry.
right, right. Well, that's a whole separate conversation.
Okay.
We're not okay. So I want to talk about what's often called the cliff, right? What happens? This is called after the IEP. So I want to just go a little bit into what's out there before our kids graduate without going into too much detail, and then talk about what happens after and how we as parents can help advocate for our kids
Okay.
before the transition, during the transition, and after, so that they will have a fulfilling life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So let's start with high school. There's a whole transition process,
Right.
right?
Yes, and they say it should start at 16 and then you hear 14, but
14, yeah.
16 was my era, but the reality is the earlier the better.
Right. It might even be 12. I haven't looked it up lately.
Yeah, and I've even heard from parents who have 3-year-olds and want to make sure they're doing everything. And that is really, I admire that. And I think that's beneficial to some
Mhm.
degree. It's putting a lot on yourself, but it's really good to get to know all of the different all of the infrastructure around autism services and education.
Right. I mean, I think we all have dreams of how we want our kids' lives to be, and then they go ahead and become grown-ups, right?
Yes.
And 3 is really young, but I do like the idea of starting to think of it early, because I think in our generation, there was so little out there, and it was like that monkey with the hands over
Yeah.
the eyes. There was like not enough support and not enough information, and it was just terrifying. And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be.
Right. It shouldn't be. It should be so clear and accessible and specific to your state or your country. So there's so much that you could be looking at and thinking about, at age 12, 14.
Right. So I think that it is good to work with your school district and do what they are supposed to do from the IEP transition planning. But one issue that I have with IEP services is they are meant to help your child in school.
Right. Right.
And I think that autism is by definition, it's a pervasive disability. It affects you in all areas of life.
It does. Right. And so that's often a complaint that the school systems don't or can't meet all those needs. And so parents are in the position of pushing hard for the needs, feeling bad that they're not getting everything, and also just kind of looking outside of the school system. But of course, that depends on if you can afford
Right.
additional
Right.
services or if your insurance covers it. So that's a real difficulty throughout someone's lifetime.
Right. And I would encourage parents, now we're doing a lot of more of mainstreaming, which I think is great. Um, and again, for the kids with more academic ability, they often can do very well
Right.
academically. I think it's reasonable to say the school is not responsible for everything, right?
Well, yeah, but in a way, there should at least be some kind of collaboration between the school and the family
Hmm.
so that you can kind of get to those other areas, definitely social skills. It's, obviously it's hard to teach that without a context. in just a group or a lunch group, something like that. But that is better than nothing. And sometimes,
Mhm.
and the parent might not have any idea of how to improve someone's social life, and dealing with other people. That's how I was for a while.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I had to send him out of district to a special school. My school system didn't have anything, really nothing for someone like Nat, which is why I ran for school board. um,
Wow.
they were behind the curveball. They did not have anything, and they had to kind of hustle once the big bubble became apparent, in the 90s, the early 90s, mid 90s.
Right. I mean, we're having a surge. I mean, as a pediatrician, I see so many kids with autism.
Yeah.
So I think the more kids there are, and why that is not a subject for this. And I've discussed it with other doctors, doctors on the podcast. So not talking about that. But we're definitely seeing more, we're diagnosing more. And so there's kind of power in numbers
Right.
that parents, I think, today have.
Yes.
But when I talk about, the school, I think you have to think of, yes, in a way, the school is a microcosm of society,
Hmm.
right? So one thing I've seen is a parent wants their child mainstreamed and their child, like your child, has greater needs,
Right.
right? And sometimes they're like, well, I want my child to be in the mainstream. And they think of it as, I want them to be in mainstream society. And that's very primal and understandable.
Hmm.
But I think we have to think of our kids' needs as not just academic, not just are they meeting some benchmark academically.
Right, because for some, that's not the goal.
Right.
And I'm not saying you're giving up on academics, but at least there needs to be a whole other world of vocational skills, and independent living skills offered to the student. And that, to me, again, the earlier the better, because with autism, a lot of the time, you need repetition before it really makes sense. And you need things, presented in a way that sort of, scaffolds from what they already know, and what they can relate to what they know. That's what I find with Nat. Whatever we teach him has to have a grain of what he already knows. Like if he's going to basketball practice instead of swim practice, I can say, this is we're going to your team. It's a different sport. It's with a ball. But it's still a team and playing. It's, and so I explain it that way, so that he kind of knows what to expect.
That is really, really good. So back to the school, I think that there's this whole process. We're not going to go into detail because I am going to be interviewing someone else more on transition planning and more of from that more professional standpoint from that. And we're talking to moms here,
Mhm.
to veteran moms. So let's go back to veteran moms. What happens when your child graduates? And it could be when they receive a high school diploma, but still have living skill, social skill deficits where they still need more support,
Right.
right? Or it could be older because they aged out, usually at 22, but it may depend on where you're living and whether things have changed. I read 26 in Michigan now.
Whoa.
I
Well,
know, right? Wouldn't you have loved those
great.
extra years?
Yeah. It's true, because my son, Nat was more ready to learn in his late 20s than any time in the school years. Global delay means delay.
Right, right, right.
So,
They keep learning, and that's something that I like parents to hear. I know you've said it. It's don't ever say it's too late in your blog,
right.
which is fantastic, by the way. I just love it so much.
Thank you.
It's honest, it's real, and it's hopeful without being Pollyanna-ish.
Right. I can't be Pollyanna-ish, because I don't see things that way. There are too many dark moments, and so I have to really kind of have a balance, or strive for that anyway.
It's important because we need more honesty because we do have these issues. Okay, so now we've gotten to what some parents call the cliff,
The
or
cliff.
some, all right, you're done. Now what?
Right.
And again, back to transition planning, you can plan earlier. It can just be very hard to do, and the school may not do as much for you as you'd like.
Right. A private program might, but yeah, it's not, it's going to be a whole lot of things, because it's public
Right,
education.
right, right.
And that's what they have to do, and that's what they should do. But I think that the whole idea of getting ready to have none of that. That is huge. And how do you get your head around that? I mean, I just started with, okay, I'm gonna have a great party for Nat, and I'm gonna get him a graduation robe, even though it's like he's in his school, it was basically in the cafeteria, and he's the only one graduating because that was when he turned 22.
Oh,
So we really wanted to make it special and meaningful, and like marking the end of this period for him and for us. So I had teachers kind of stand up and tell everyone what they have experienced with Nat. I tried to make it really special.
oh,
Had a great cake that it was like a calendar and a little van taking him to a house. It was like 3-dimensional. It was amazing. But it
wow.
really helped me. I feel like cake helps a lot.
Cake is everything. Cake is everything.
It is.
But there are other options in terms of if your child says, "I want to graduate with my class," I'm confident that you can work that out and do something later to graduate them to their second part of high school.
Yeah,
If they've been mainstreamed.
right. I mean, and mainstreaming was a difficult thing for us to look at, because there were just a lot of deficits, a lot of challenges for Nat. I don't like to say deficits, but
Right.
yeah, there were challenges for him, and so there was going to be too much of that he would have to have adapted and stuff like that. So what we did every now and then was we tried to find like something he could do with kids his age through the school system. So like in high school, he did the rock climbing after school that the other high school
Nice.
kids were doing, or we tried to have him on track team, but the problem is for the practices, they would go running everywhere. And so I would have needed somebody to stay with him. So it was too hard. But to me, that was the mainstreaming experience
Right.
Nat could have. Obviously, kids with other skills, all the way down the line, can have a lot more.
Right. But I do think that it's not just about academic mainstreaming. It is that social piece that I think all kids should have some availability to if that works for them, if
Right.
that benefits them with whatever supports they need. I think they're doing more of that over time. Again, we are grizzled old veterans here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that our experience might be different. So I think that that's really important. But then you have the issue of, okay, so your child has left high school and you have to figure out what to do next. I will bring up one issue that we didn't talk about earlier, which is independent living skills.
Yeah.
And the problem is if your child is not in a vocational program, and because of greater academic mainstreaming, I think less and less of the lower support needs. I'm not using higher, lower functioning because I think that also is so misleading.
Yeah.
I think more and more kids are graduating even with high school diplomas and yet not having independent living skills.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who had that in school, other than my son in a private program. And of course, academics were completely sacrificed in his case. But starting at age 13, it felt like we actually were choosing. Was Nat going to follow a more typical student life, or was he now going to be, in the other vocational independent living pragmatic skills category? And
Right.
for me, that was a sad time. I felt like I was giving up on him, but in the end, I think it was the right decision.
No, I think it's really important. And like I said, as there's more and more focus on mainstreaming and accommodating and modifying academics, the kids are not getting skills that I think are really, really important. So I think one thing I would put out there to parents is do not neglect independent living skills
Right.
because you're putting so much effort into the academic ones. I will say for my own daughter, she has good verbal skills and she was being pushed ahead. And I actually got a lawyer to fight for a combined, ADL vocational. And I'm not going to say what somebody said to me. I'll tell you
I
later.
can guess.
But I was really under enormous amount of pressure to just do academic. They wanted her, out at 18 if she could be, which without those skills. And that was part of how I did transition planning, is I was planning for what happens after high school. I'm not going to have a transition that is that abrupt that you're like falling off a cliff. I want a seamless transition.
Right. I mean, in our case, like, so Nat worked starting at 16, the school employed him in all kinds of ways. And I even had our state liaison, for developmental services tell us the more you can show that he can work, the more hours of supported work he'll get when he graduates, when he's finished. So that was really important to just like make sure we had evidence that he could work. So, because I really wanted him in a program that had outside stuff. So that was
Right.
like one of the first things that we thought of when we were thinking of the Cliff era, the Cliff time, was
Right.
that we needed to think about daytime involved, what was he doing during the day and where was he going to live? So how is he going to have fun? And how is he going to have 24/7 supervision? So we had to think about all that stuff. So I focused a lot on housing at first. I had a whole vision of what I wanted his future, his housing and his neighborhood and housemates. I wanted it to be as much like my other two younger sons as possible, like the guys living together in a big messy house. That really appealed to me, and I thought Nat could handle that with the right staff. So essentially he has that now, but that took a long time for us to get to. But the housing thing, I was thinking about that ahead of time, because he wasn't going to live with us. We did not have the ability to do that. We both work, and having him live with us as a teen was really difficult,
Right.
for my other two sons and for us. So we weren't going to go through that again. I needed to come up with housing. I needed to find him a day program where he'd be out in the community a lot. So those are the things I focused on, just like day and night. Where's he going to be?
That's really important. The housing piece is really, really important. And I think typically the kids stay home afterwards. I don't think it's typical to be focused on housing right after graduation, but I think that's something that's a huge topic, because right now there is, at least, I don't know in your area, you're in Boston, but in the New York area, there is a severe shortage of housing.
Yes, here too.
Yeah. I mean, it may be countrywide, actually.
I'm sure, because you and I are both in states that probably have more funding available than others, and it's still really lacking.
Right.
But yeah, we thought about housing because that's where he was. Other people have to think about, all right, if they're living with me, how are they going to get around during the day? Like what's available in terms of transportation, and how do I afford that? And so there's a lot of that to think about. I just tell people, I just think other parents should maybe just imagine a day. Just think about a day, for your kid, what is that going to look like? How is that going to go? And how do you get that to happen? It took us a long time to get to a satisfying place now.
Right. And I think that your son was just right before they came out with self-direction model.
Right.
So you didn't do that.
No, I mean, we tried.
You did try it.
Yeah,
You did go through that process. I wasn't sure.
We didn't have self-direction funding, but what we did was we worked a lot with the Department of Developmental Services in trying to create housing or a life that was really specific to what Nat probably wanted, like urban living. I think he likes that. He likes having things to walk to. So that kind of thing, as well as what does he like to do during the day? Well, he likes to be really busy. And so how are we going to get that? What day program specializes more in autism and no tabletop activities? We wanted Nat to do whatever jobs he could. I don't care if he got paid. Honestly, I don't care. And jobs and fun. How's he going to have fun? So we had to think about that a lot too.
Right. So actually, the person I'm going to interview is one of those person-centered planning people, and you're talking about basically person-centered planning that you did without a specific organization or a specific model. Would that be
Right.
accurate?
Yeah.
Right. So my daughter is just a little bit younger, and we got the self-direction model. And so I can tell you that the idea behind it is fantastic. The idea of person-centered planning, envisioning the life, that to the best of your ability and ideally with the person themselves input, right? It's
Yeah.
nothing for me without me, however they can communicate it, right? And then you get a budget and you basically are the agency.
Yeah.
And so the issue that I had with it is because there is such a shortage in housing, and because there's also not necessarily everything out there that would work for your particular child, you can have a very isolated child. You can struggle getting staff, and you have your kid home. They've fallen off the cliff into your living room.
Right.
Not to be negative here, but I'm just being realistic in
Yep.
terms of we should talk about this. Like, how can we help parents earlier on so that this doesn't happen to them?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think it starts with like getting a real idea of what your own kid likes to do and is good at doing. And it's a matter of kind of finding a way to satisfy that need and that skill and talent. Um, so let me think. I know a guy who loves pets and he loves cemeteries. Um, so he started a little company, and I don't think he is verbal, but with the help of probably his mom, he started an online company for making customized cemetery, um, headstones for your pet.
Wow, I love it.
So he does that. He has his own business. I don't know if he makes much money. To me, that isn't necessarily the key.
Right.
Unfortunately, I mean, of course you need the money, but the satisfaction and the fulfillment that your kid might be able to feel, so even someone without a ton of skills, you know your kids, so you know what they like, and you kind of can maybe figure out how that can be met so that it's not
Right.
just the living room.
Right, right. What I meant by the living room, meaning the ball is in my court, and my concern with this model is I feel like it kicks the can down the road of when something happens to me, what happens to my kid if I am the program.
Yes,
And
right.
so that's what I want to talk about for just a few minutes, because I think it's important for parents who are listening to this whose kids are younger to know everything they can know
Hmm.
and be aware.
Right. Um, yes, we didn't do that sort of self-direction per se. I have a lot of friends who are younger and did do that. One particular family, they with self-direction, at least in my state, you get less because the state rationalizes it by saying you don't have the overhead of an agency, so you get less.
Wait, it's supposed to be the other way around. You don't have the overhead of the agency, so you get more. In other words, the same amount of money goes further because you're not paying the staff of an agency.
No, it doesn't work that way. So
Whoa.
the parent has to figure out a tight budget and come up with a program. So I know someone who's done it. They have a lot of resources though. So and yet it still took them a few years to get to a point where they felt like their son had a job that he liked, a routine, that involved both independent living, ADL skills, and also a job, and social life. They had to do all of that with that money that they were given.
Wow. And we haven't talked about this yet, but when we talk about autism, it often comes with behavioral issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing to have a kid at home who may have some cognitive limitations, some social limitations, but is easy to work with. But what if your kid is behaviorally difficult? Then what?
I think that what happens is you have to try to make a case to the state for a supported program, or at least support coming into your house. You need some kind of respite. And that's not easy to find, but I guess I would have started with some kind of behavioral agency, and tried to appeal to the state for the funds for skill building and non-regression, with one of those groups, or at least find some, even like a college student majoring in PT, preferably a guy if he's big, to sort of spend those hours with Nat doing, even just physical stuff, and handling whatever comes up to the best of his ability. There's just so much that I've had to accept as like not quite what I want for Nat.
Right. No, well, yes, absolutely.
I had to accept that reality,
Yeah.
which is really hard, really hard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's still possible to live within those limits.
Right. I mean, I've had to like look at these, books and programs where they give you the ideal and say, okay, I'm going to just take like a fraction of that and I'm going to be okay with that because it's going to have to be the best that I can do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I totally hear you on that. But I want to go back to both of us have our kids, our young adults in small group homes. So I want to talk about that because that is not being posed much as an option. The self-direction movement is in part there because of, if you go back to deinstitutionalization, right? Because I think that that's what's part of this, is that there used to be these large, psychiatric and mental, and developmental disability institutions, which are horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
thank God they've been closed, but nothing has been built as an alternative.
Right. And what people, I guess the powers that be like to say, well, we now bring it into the home, which means that the person is now in the community. So to them, the parent's house equals community. So parents' house plus support. And that's what people get. And if you're in one of the rare cases where you can get a group home, even in that case, you get what's available.
Right.
And then you have to make that work. So none of it is ideal. But I just tell myself, well, that's the real world. I will choose my battles. I think about what my other two sons, they're not living so great either. So yeah, that's what
Right. It's a hard world for our young adults. And that's one way to think of it so you don't get too upset. Because I feel like, when we had our kids in school, we had all these books on how to get good services, and we were often very good advocates for our kids, and we would like line it all up. They're going to get this and they're going to get that. I had vocational and I had, her working with kids like she loved. I had all these things lined up. It was so beautiful, right? And then you have to move out of that and you have to, like you said, make do. It sounds like defeatist. It isn't.
It's not. It's
Right.
acceptance and it's reality. And you have to find the parts that you can do well, that your adult child can do well, and focus on that.
But I think also I think of us as the leading edge,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because autism was just starting to rise then. And now we have so many more. And so I think there's power in numbers. And I'm not going to push parents who are parents of autistic kids to be political
Right.
advocates. Was that the right word?
Yeah, or activists, whatever.
Activists. That's the word that I wanted. Because we are tired by then. Oh my gosh. If we
Mhm.
weren't tired before, we're tired then. Just being a parent in general is hard. And being a parent of an autistic young adult is super hard. But I do think that we can be activists and advocates in the personal for our own kid.
Mhm. In the personal, so you mean like joining things like Special Olympics? When
No, I mean that when we advocate for it to be just a little bit better because it's not going to be perfect.
Right,
We're not just helping our own kid.
I see. Yes.
We're changing the system one kid at a time.
Right. That's maybe the best thing you could do, because I mean, I know you were saying they don't have to become political activists, but what if there's just some form letter that you can just kind of cut and paste and send to your state rep?
Right, but even if you can't do that, because I have a lot of I'm sorry. We're so tired. It's so hard. What I mean, what I mean is when you are advocating for your own child, instead of saying these are the choices. They're not acceptable, right? When
Yeah.
you're fighting to get your own child a better life, you are an activist. You're an activist for your child, but you're paving the way for everybody after you.
That's true. And you might even be like educating someone on your team about like a new thing that you've tried, that they could then put into place. You know, I don't have an example off the top of my head, but I definitely think that we are the agents of change because it matters so much to us.
It does. And I want to go back to what you said about the community. This idea that the parent is the community. The parent is not the community. The community is the community.
Right, right. It does fall on the parent if they're not going to be in a group home or shared living or an institution, which you said they're mostly closed. It is going to fall to the parent to come up with what their kid can do. And it shouldn't be up to the parent, but it pretty much is. But you can find people in the community that connect with your guy or daughter, who might be able to give you a little bit of respite and give them a little bit of a social life. I mean, that's kind of, to me, there's this concept of circles of support. And my friend Cheryl Ryan Chan has a whole thing about how to do that. And I think that, to the best of your ability, you could think about who in my circle might be able to help out with this particular aspect of my child's life. And it doesn't have to be, like written in a contract. It's just, you think about who else could do the thing that you do, who could maybe substitute for you a little bit. Again, not ideal, but that's how you build his community.
Right. I'm just thinking of the line that you said on your blog about no one will care about my child the way I will. Do you
Right.
remember that line?
Yeah.
But while you're the center, you can build those people, right? And I think that that's really important. I want you to talk for just a minute about something I read about on your blog that you called ghost.
Yeah. That's under this same category of community building. Ghost started off as just me making a joke saying, my plan for my son when I die is for me to become a ghost. How do I do that? And that, that's something I wrote about and all that, but it kind of got a lot of people's attention. And soon I began to think, well, actually, how could we do something like that? Something that replaces me. And so then GHOST actually became an acronym for Group Home Oversight and Support Team. And the idea was that you'd get other people, friends, people who are in the community who want to be a part of your guy's life. Though that person might go to the group home and hang out with your son or daughter for an hour or even 5 minutes, just to sort of see. At first, this whole thing was, how do we make sure he's being taken care of when we can't do it? So the idea was, this friend goes into the home and does a clothing inventory. And in doing that clothing inventory, they look around, they see, is the room clean? Are the sheets clean? So you have another pair of eyes. That idea, we evolved away from that, because it seemed like we were becoming it would look like we were spies.
Right.
And we want to work with all the organizations. We don't want to alienate anybody.
Right. I'm going to say one thing for just 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because as a fellow, group home parent, it is such a great tension.
Yes.
Right. It's such a great tension. And again, I think that is something that as parents, when we were advocating for the perfect, program, when we had the IEP, and much more funding, I think it's really important to get a balance between being an advocate, but accepting.
Yes. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And that that is the lifelong goal of the parent, I think, and whoever else might be really invested in your son or daughter's life. Like, we have the 2 younger siblings, who we're trying to bring into Nat's world without making that a burden for them.
Mm-hmm.
The reality, but it doesn't have to mean it's like going to take over their lives like it did for me.
It can't be. It would be completely overwhelming, and I think it's inappropriate. And I think some parents plan for after they die as the sibling.
Right. And, that's not fair. And then the sibling has a whole learning curve. They're going to have it anyway. But we're trying to like now just kind of with, tell them little anecdotes, what's going on with Nat's life now. I just now wrote an email asking that they be included in the team meeting, that we make it a Zoom so that they could attend, just to be a part of it and see what it's like. They're not making any decisions for Nat right now, but they're just it's gonna be on their radar screen a little bit.
That's hard though, because I think you have to really be careful with how much you ask and what you ask, because say you're asking, you have to drop everything to be at a meeting in the middle of the day
I
and they're
know.
working, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm struggling with the same thing you are.
right. It's difficult. It's taken a lot of little conversations. I don't even know how to start it with the boys sometimes because I'm gonna cry and
I know, I
they're gonna
know.
feel guilty and it's exactly what I don't want, but
Right.
we have to do it. So we've done it in little steps. Talk to them about, okay, I hope you guys will have some kind of role in Nat's life. It's not going to be like he's living in your house, although I'm sure people have to do that. I mean,
Yeah, no, they do. They do.
we're not doing that, but other people, I think about, can I have someone here in Boston who will check on that and then kind of report to Max and Ben? And how do I get that once I'm dead? you know,
Barring being a ghost. We still have to finish the ghost. I interrupted you in the middle of changing over what you mean by ghost. Sorry.
okay, that's where, so, we with Ghost, the whole idea then became, how do we just extend the community of
Hmm.
this person, so that it doesn't all just die with us, and it actually could be a way to enrich their lives right now. So I mean, I have a friend who has a special team that she calls on when she needs something, but she has a person who happens to be financially trained, and that person can help out every now and then. And in return, my friend might paint a room for them. So that's kind of how we started. We were thinking about it's like this website called Community Planners.
Hmm.
So, it's basically a time bank. You put in time and you get back. So that to me is community. That's how you extend the community, that kind of thing. That's all there is, really. You have to help each other.
Right. And that's what I was insinuating when I said, the community is the community, not the immediate family. So extending, I love that so much. I want to broadcast it everywhere, this idea.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be a direct barter like your program is. That's,
No.
very like tit for tat. But if you can, I mean, and my ideal would be, and my daughter's not living in my immediate community. I wish she was. There was not a group home there.
Mm.
I think your son is living closer to you.
Yeah, 3
You're
miles.
so lucky. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think we lucked out with this one, but I have to knock wood as I say that.
Right. Right. I
In
know.
this moment in time, I
Right.
feel good about what's going
I
on.
know. I know. I know. I know. But let's be positive about that, because that is really awesome. Because the point that I was going to make is, if you're there, first of all, it's easier for you to have oversight right now, but you can also have more control over trying to build up a community in that area around your child,
Right.
which I don't have.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, I guess like what we try to do is visit the home a lot, get to know the staff, hang out, do holidays with them. We did a little bit of Hanukkah last year, the fun
Hmm.
parts, the coins and the dreidel and the candle.
Right.
Um, and get the housemates interested. It's like sometimes people don't even think of the housemates are also community.
Right. No, for sure they are.
You know,
I like to get them gifts like for Purim. I'll send a fruit basket for everybody,
yeah, yeah,
that kind of thing.
we did that. I mean, Nat's house is not a Jewish house, but so we all got together, and I gave them Hanukkah presents,
It's the
so,
same idea. It doesn't matter.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was great. And it's really about looking at all the people who interact with him, and seeing if there's one of those people there that kind of really gets him and loves him. Even this housemate of Nat's told me he puts gel in Nat's hair sometimes just to make
Aw.
it look more right.
Well, they're part of their family.
Yeah, I just almost cried when I heard that. It's like, wow,
Aw.
that's worth gold.
I
That's
remember that story you told about him going back to a party there with dancing and everything.
Yeah. We
I love that story.
It was we were gonna go to a Christmas party. It was gonna be like 3 or 4 group homes in one big house, which is Nat's house. And my husband Ned and I were gonna go because we go, and we were like, okay, we'll stay for an hour. But we went and we had a really great time. They had karaoke, which is just the big unifier, I think.
For some, not my daughter. No, she'd have her noise canceling headphones on. But anyway.
That's true. I mean, in this case, it was group homes with different abilities, different disabilities,
Right.
and so it was quite a mix. But there was singing and lots of good food, tons of food. That's the other thing. Food always helps.
Right.
Helps anything, and so we ended up having a really great time. There was one resident who kept insisting I was his wife, but we dealt with that. My husband came over, some staff came over and said, well, she's not your wife. And I said, I'm your friend though, so, but
Aw.
it's real world, it's real
Right.
interactions. And you start to get the house to get to know the housemates as real people, not just like, oh, he's look at him, it's like real,
Right.
we talk about things if we can. I just make sure I say hi to everyone and that they say hi back to me. That's a big thing, with Nat, always trying to like, come on, everybody, follow up, make him say hi, make him acknowledge you. Then it seems more like a relationship.
Right. Right. I love that. But I think also, I don't know how much parents appreciate that just because your child has a disability doesn't mean they want to be more independent. And living outside the home is one way of being more independent.
Right. They might not be ready for that. I know a lot of people in Nat's, Nat is in a rock band.
Oh, love it.
It's an all developmentally delayed rock band.
Oh, I need a video of it someday.
It's fantastic. It's hearing Nat sing. He's the front man, even though
Oh,
he's not very verbal at all in real life. As the front man, he sings the whole song, and there I can hear him say whole
wow.
sentences about love, and um, it's just this mind-blowing thing that sometimes music is
Right,
just so different from everything
right.
else, that suddenly your daughter or son can shine. I mean, there he was, and the last concert we had, the drummer came up and gave him a high five, and so then I
Oh,
kind of felt like, so it wasn't just the parents all enjoying it. The drummer and his band felt like he'd done a good job. So to me, that
oh,
really meant it was something.
wow. That is amazing. I do want that a video. You have videos, right?
Yes,
If you
many.
don't mind sharing with me,
I
I really want to see that.
Okay, I will.
That is so, so amazing. So I think we've talked about a lot of things. I'm going to have other professionals come in and look at it from different angles. Is there anything else you want to share?
Um, I guess, yeah, the thing I want to share is I wish the world would know that these people as adults keep growing, keep
Right.
learning. So, there's no stopping point. And that might feel hard for a parent to hear, like, oh my God, I still have to think about all that. But in a way, it's also a miracle. It's totally
Mhm.
wonderful. That now Nat wants to be with people, whereas he didn't when he was younger. He wants to be with people, but not talk to them. That's his personal way of being friends
Right.
with someone. So kind of like keeping an eye on your person's progress and abilities, and like look for changes, and things that you can supplement. Of course you have to take breaks for yourself. You do have to have your own life, and that's where we are now, trying to have our own life, without doing too much, because Nat has started to choose to be at his group home instead of come here on the weekends.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had to deal with that, mixed feelings. Now all three of my sons don't want much to do with me.
And that's normal.
It's normal and good. It's good.
Right.
So keeping an eye on that, and to whatever degree I can. There's sometimes definite times where I can't deal with it. My husband might step in and do some of what I do, the advocating or the visiting the group home, keeping in touch with the day program. And, I just think you should really keep a hold on how your guy is doing. I say guy, but I mean both.
Right.
Um, how they're doing and what's changing, and capitalize on the changes. I never thought he'd be in a band, but this kind of came along kind of organically, hanging out with other other autistic people who did play instruments. And eventually Nat was given a drum, but that wasn't his thing. And we suddenly learned that he wanted to be a singer. He wanted to be the star. Never knew that. This was like at age 27.
Wow. That's
So
a really important point. And I've read that a lot about, particularly about autism, is that they just have endless growth in them. Endless
yeah,
growth. You just don't know.
right. So there isn't that window that closes at age 5.
There really isn't.
So that's just very hopeful and true. But you also have to be ready for it to not be what you
Right.
expected, or, you have to learn that what your children give you is their own gift, and it's not going to be what you imagined, and that's okay.
Right. But also let other people into your child's life. You shouldn't be the be all and end all, and you can't be forever anyway.
Right. You have to definitely be thinking of other people who get him, who get it. So, to whatever degree they can be a part of things, you just kind of make them care, you know?
We will make you care.
Well, I try to include people. I try to,
Right.
talk about him so that they know him and think about him as a real guy. And, you know, that's the work I do for him, is really trying to make the rest of the world care.
Yeah.
So
It's okay. Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, it's super corny, but you built your village.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hillary
Yeah.
was right.
She was so right. That was such a great line.
It does take a village. It might take 2, but yeah.
Right. But we can build it. And that's the best thing that we can do for our kids as they grow up, is to help them grow up into a community that cares about them and for them.
Yes. You need to find the community. You need to kind of make it sometimes. And you have to be open to new stuff, and not immediately say, no, he can't do that. Because you never know.
Right. And there's all kinds of other creative possibilities for living arrangements, which we're not going to go into
Right.
because we're not experts in this, and that's okay. But I have to thank you so, so much for doing this with me. You are amazing.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm really
you.
glad you're out there giving a voice to what no one else is talking about.
Right. Well, I do want to say that in my book, there's a lot of different housing models, but they're
Right.
organic. There's stuff that parents did. So it's not
Right.
really technical. Here's ideas.
Right.
There's a lot out there.
Right. Well, we're going to link to your blog
Thank you.
and maybe directly to that book, Adults with Autism,
Autism Adulthood.
Autism Adulthood, because like I said, I think that's the only book out there like that. Am I right?
I haven't seen others. I keep seeing the younger people memoirs, which are also important. I wrote one of those too, but
Right.
it's really the adulthood thing is the longer period of life. So
Right. And it's also for the wide range of autism, as opposed to, say, the ones that have the greatest cognitive ability who are going to college. There's definitely a lot of guides for how to, send your autistic young adult to college.
oh yeah,
That's great if they can go. And
right. And
that's not
dating and doing a
right.
job interview.
Right. all the things that a certain percentage will be able to do, but many will not, at least right now.
Right. So there's challenges, like how do you help them have fun? I think that's so important. And social life is part of that, you know.
Right,
Given what their skills are, how do you find a way for them to have a fulfilling life?
right, right. Absolutely. Again, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
It was. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the JOMA Preventative Health Podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and share this with your friends. For more information, check out our Instagram at JOMA_org. Check out our website, www.joma.org, that's JOWMA.org, or email us at health@joma.org.